Today we continue on with our NHL offseason plan series where we take a look at the Anaheim Ducks. Another year being out of the playoffs, but they did make some big improvements, although we've already seen a coaching change, and we're also going to take a look today not only of how this past season worked out and take a look at their record, some key numbers, but we're going to take a look at their internal business like RFAs, UFAs, who comes back, who goes, what are they going to do with the 2025 NHL Draft, another high pick, will they make any big splashes in free agency, will they make any big trades, we'll discuss the expectations and how this team could look different coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're looking at the Anaheim Ducks. We're going to analyze their 24-25 season, take a look at how things went, and then take a look at all the things we should expect from them throughout the course of the offseason. First, we're going to recap last year. Then we'll get into like their internal business, what they have for cap space, the draft, free agency trades, all that good stuff, and see what we should expect from them. So let's first start by recapping last year, where they made some good strides. They had a record of 35, 37, and 10 for 80 points. That's, not quite 500 hockey, but it was pretty close. Down the stretch, it was looking like they were going to end up being a 500 hockey club, and they just missed by only a couple points. That's a big, drastically improved team from the year before, where they only had 59 points and had a record of 27, 50, and 5. So it's a lot more wins, a lot more points, and a big step forward. Now, ultimately, we still saw head coach Greg Cronin dismissed from his job, even with that big jump in points. But we'll discuss that in a minute. Now, their other key team metrics this year included scoring 217 goals, not nearly enough. That's 30th in the league. Goals against, 261 for 23rd. So both of those metrics need to get better. However, here's the thing. They actually both improved a fair bit over last year, but they still have a ways to go before they can really be a threat to get into the playoffs and have any chance of being in the top half of the league. So they actually scored 13 more goals than the year before, so they went from 204 to 217. Not a bad improvement. And then the goals against was cut down from 295 to 261. So that's a 26 goal improvement on that side of it. So when you think about it, they allowed 26 fewer. They scored 13 more. That's a difference of 39 goals. That's a big difference in one season. So they did do some good improvements. But unfortunately, special teams was an area where we didn't see really any improvement, and it was really not good at all. They had the worst power play in the entire NHL, only 11.8%. That certainly needs a ton of work. Penalty kill was 29th at 74.2. So special teams play a big role in the outcome of games, and certainly they give it a lot of work to do in those areas. The goaltenders actually had decent years. I mean, I think a big part of the team's overall improvement was the fact that they got league average or better goaltending on a lot of nights. Lucas Dostal became the bona fide number one, played the bulk of the games with a record of 23, 23, and 7. Had a goals against average of 3.1, which I'm sure he'd like to get down a little bit, but a 903 save percentage. Usually anything over 900, you have a chance to win. So, I mean, that's not bad, especially for a young goaltender. John Gibson, who kind of took a back seat and became the bona fide backup, if you will, but also missed time on multiple occasions with injuries yet again. Had a record of 11 and 2, but a 2.77 goals against and a 912 save percentage. So again, overall save percentage was actually pretty decent, and I think contributed a lot to their move upwards in the win column and the point column on the overall season. Their team leaders this year, which needs to get better, but their leading scorer was Troy Terry, 55 points. If you're going to have any chance to make the playoffs, those top point getters need to be up at least around 70, 80, if not more. Mason McTavish, another pretty good campaign from him, but I don't think he's anywhere near his ceiling yet either, 52 points. And then Frankie Vetrano and Leo Carlson both had 45. So again, the number of goals for needs to improve. Their overall scoring, I think they have some guys that can take big leaps, but there's lots of potential there, but not enough being fully realized here just yet. Now, as I mentioned, before the season was too far from being done, we found out that Greg Cronin, after only 2 years behind the bench, was dismissed as head coach. Now that we know what they've done, I think this was more of a case of seeing an opportunity, in their opinion, of getting a more experienced coach where they saw it as a major upgrade, more so than the fact that Cronin didn't do a good job. Now, but at the same time, I think there was an argument that Cronin didn't really, I don't know, there's definitely players on the team that I don't think was overly fond of him as a coach. I mean, obviously some guys saw some good improvements. The team saw good improvements. I don't think you can really say he did a horrible job, but I think there were some that just didn't really click with him. But you know what? That's probably going to be the case with just about every coach. Anytime you see a coaching change, there's always players that benefit from it because they can either they're getting deployed into different roles within the team, or they just like that style of play better, or what have you. And there's always guys sometimes that take a step back, and it's more of a learning curve for them because they're trying to play a different way than they have before. So there's always pros and cons to everything like that. But of course, they've hired Joel Quenneville, who was out of the league for 4 years, who was connected to the Chicago Blackhawks during the Kyle Beach incident, which obviously cost a lot of people their jobs. So Quenneville, after 4 years being into the league, was reinstated this past summer by the NHL, saying he could seek NHL opportunities. Same goes for former Blackhawks general manager Stan Bowman. Both have done the work, they say, and put in lots of time learning. Kyle Beach himself was consulted before either of them were granted the opportunity to work in the NHL again, and he gave his blessing. So as much as I know, for me, the way I looked at it was, looking at what's happened here, like, do these guys really need another opportunity? Like, it's not even so much, I don't care what they were like as hockey people. This was a pretty bad thing that happened. And is there nobody else that you could consider hiring just to avoid the PR storm that's going to come with it? But I guess, Kyle Beach himself is content that they've done the work to learn from their ways and what was not done before, I guess you could say. And Joe Quenneville has vowed that, this type of thing will never happen again under his watch, and that he's, prepared to do big things with this team and in the community. So I guess we'll see. I certainly, like I said, I wasn't fond of it, just because, like, the big thing is just for me, just like you see all these retreads coming back, and it's more and more opportunities, even though these things have happened. I understand Quenneville has quite the resume, and in Pat Verbeek's case, let's acknowledge the fact that he's nearing the end of his contract, his first one as GM, and he's under pressure to get in the playoffs. We heard it right from the owner's mouth himself, Samueli, talking about this team doesn't want to they don't want to be losing anymore. They don't want to be rebuilding anymore. They want to get in the playoffs, and they feel that going in the direction of Quenneville is a way to do that. Now, we also seen comments just today from Greg Cronin, who acknowledged that when the team, because Quenneville has been residing in Florida, and when the Ducks were in Florida, that he was been around the team a little bit, coming to watch, and that Cronin had some conversations with him, just kind of picking his brain as an experienced coach and whatever, and then come to find out that he's his replacement. Like, I wonder how long this has really been in the works. I really wonder if it's been several months in the making here, because we've heard that he was the Ducks guy all along, provided that their background search turned out, what they were hoping it would, and that they'd be able to move forward here. So I guess let me know what your thoughts are on Quenneville. I know I've seen a ton of Ducks fans on social media not happy about this, not questioning his hockey, coaching skills or his hockey, intelligence or anything of that nature. It's because of what happened before. But let me know what you think in the comments. I'm curious to see what Ducks fans truly think, and if it's a general consensus that it was a bad move, or if you're still going to support the team or what have you. So let me know what you think on that. Cap space wise, they got $38.6 million and 16 contracts in place for next year. So they can have a maximum 23-man roster. They've got 16 already signed. So obviously that means they can sign upwards of another 7 players, but they got $38 million to do that. So that's plenty of money. They could make a big splash if they really want to. Looking at their expiring contracts, because that's usually the first thing teams tend to, is their own internal business. Restricted free agents include Mason McTavish, Isaac Lunderstrom, Brett Leeson, Lucas Dostal, and Drew Hellison. I would think all or most will get contracts. I mean, obviously they have the first right to keep these guys and sign them since they're restricted. McTavish, the biggest name here, along with Dostal, those guys, could see them maybe getting long-term deals. Maybe they want to get ahead of these contracts and get long-term contracts signed before they continue to really hit their peak and become more expensive. I would not be surprised at that in the least. Lunderstrom, Hellison will get contracts. Leeson might get a contract too. They're not going to be as long-term or as expensive. They will be a little bit less complicated, shorter term, and less money. On the UFA side of things, these guys probably not going to be back, including goaltender Ville Husso, Oliver Shillington, Robbie Fabry, and Brock McGinn. I think there's a pretty good chance all of those guys are probably let go and to explore other opportunities. And then there's a bunch of players that are eligible for contract extensions. Doesn't mean that they have to get one this offseason. Just means they're eligible. And I would think that some of these guys are going to be real curious to see how the team proceeds, whether or not they want to go long-term, do they want to go short-term, or, who's part of the future here. But a lot of these guys are younger players, a few veterans, so it includes Trevor Zegras. Definitely going to be an interesting name to watch. He's been in and out of the rumor mill the past couple of years. He's been injured, hasn't quite lived up to the hype more recently. Tried to make changes on his game under Cronin. What does Quenneville think of this player? Can he get him back on track? That's going to be a big one. Cutter Gauthier, of course, comes in as a rookie this past year. Scored, I think it was 20 goals. He had a good year. They're definitely going to want to extend him probably, but how long and how much, that's a tougher question. Leo Carlson, another high pick with a player that's got a big future for this club. Again, now these guys are going to be RFAs too, right? So there's no rush to get it done. The advantage for the team is that if you do it before they get too much more production under their belts, they won't be as expensive. They don't have as much leverage, but again, we'll see. Radko Gudas and Jacob Trouba on the back end definitely are eligible. I don't know how those will be handled. Again, they'll be pending UFAs if they go into next year, so they may want to wait on those two. Hard to say. Jackson Lacombe, who's slowly become the team's probably most important defenseman. He's eligible. Again, I'd probably want to get ahead of that. Same with Olin Zellweger and Pavel Mentyukov. There's 3 young D there that are, all progressing quite well in their development, and I think all have a bright future with the Anaheim Ducks. So you get Lacombe, Zellweger, Mentyukov, Gauthier, and Carlson. If they don't sign, they'll be restricted free agents next year. Same as Zegras, but Zegras is obviously a little bit older, different stage with Arbrights and all that. They don't have to be signed. I'm going to be curious to see how they proceed here, but certainly seeing contract extensions for some of those guys, very, very likely that we could see in the offseason. Now, as far as the top questions facing this team, besides that, externally, is did they make the right choice for coach? And there's going to be a lot of debate over this, and really, I think over time, we're not really going to know the answer for some time because at this rate, he's going to get a chance to coach. Has he still got what it takes to be an effective coach after being away from the league for 4 years? Heaven forbid, I think that there's probably a little chance of seeing any kind of off-ice incidents that are going to be anything near what we saw in Chicago. So, that would be shocking. Again, Quenneville wasn't part of causing anything like that in Chicago. So I don't think we have any concerns that way. It's really, is he the right coach? Is he going to be effective with this group? And that's a big question. We won't know the answer until the season gets underway. Like I said, Pat Verbeek and owner, the Samuelis want to see this team get into the playoffs next year. So how bold are they going to be? Like I said, they got lots of cap space. They clearly have a lot of young players that are either restricted or about to be restricted that could sign extensions. So they've got some decisions to make there. And then you go into the draft. Now the 2025 NHL Draft, they're not picking quite as high with the improvement. They dropped them down to 10th overall. But when they want to get in the playoffs, a 10th overall pick, well, they're probably not going to play for 2 years, maybe 3. So do they trade that pick and try to get, a top-notch player who can come in and help them right away? Are they going to make a big splash in free agency? If Mitch Marner, for example, I don't know that Marner's going to be leaving the Leafs. There's lots of speculation, has been for some time. I think a lot of that's going to be dictated by how their playoff run goes. And as I'm recording this, they're in the second round against the Florida Panthers in a 2-2 series. If they go on to win that series, they'll go to the conference final. Well, that's going to be the furthest they've ever made it with this core group of players. The team management might be inclined to want to continue building and keep them together. It might offer Mitch a big bag that he can't refuse to stay with his hometown team. If they don't get past Florida, and let's say Matthews Marner continues, because at this rate they haven't had a great offensive series against the Panthers, maybe and they lose, then the team might be more willing to be like, maybe we need to do something different. And as much as they can't really trade Marner, they could trade his signing rights, but that's usually small value. Is that a case where they decide that the cap space is like the return, if you will, and they go after another big name? Of course, we know they tried to trade Marner for Rantanen before the deadline, and he wouldn't waive. So is there hard feelings there? Like a player like Marner, if he makes it to free agency, will be by far the biggest name out there. There's not a huge crop of big name free agents, so would the Ducks go after a guy like that? Would Marner be interested in going to Anaheim? They've got a lot of young talent there, certainly from a lifestyle perspective. You're in California, you get that beach lifestyle. There's a lot to like about going there. You've got an ownership group who's committed to winning. So, I don't know, right? But how big of a splash are they willing to make? You have to think that if Marner makes it to free agency, that Pat Verbeek's going to be out there with his checkbook trying to get, no guarantee he makes it happen, but they're definitely going to be in the mix, you think, right? They have to be. And then there's that 10th overall pick. Do they trade it? Could they bring in a big piece? Other guys that I wonder their futures, is we're finally going to see a John Gibson trade. He had a little bit of health problems this past year, but he played well down to the final year of his contract. So, not much time. I think a team like Pittsburgh or Philly, where he's from Pennsylvania, maybe that becomes a reality. They could use some help, both those teams, with goaltending. Is that something that finally happens? I wonder about Trevor Zegras again, but is this going to be a case just like we saw with Craig Berube going into Toronto? Speaking of Marner, last summer there was lots of speculation. Could they try to trade Marner or do something? Because obviously they were lots of talk about that after a first round exit against the Bruins. And it seemed like Craig Berube really wanted to have a chance to work with him and thought he could help make this team better with the core group they had. And so far, I think it's fair to say that they are better. Are they better enough, though, to get over the hump? We're going to find out over the next course of this next week or so as they play games 5, 6, or possibly 7 against the Florida Panthers. And it's going to be gut check time. But could it be the same sort of scenario with Joel Quenneville? Before they move on from Zegras, who was a very high pick and a guy who they've invested a lot of time and effort in into helping develop, does he convince the team and management to not trade him and to say, let me work with him? I think I can unlock some things and get him going to the level that we thought he was going to be at a couple of years ago when he was like back-to-back 60-point player. So, again, those are the players we're watching. There's bound to be a few trades. How significant, it's hard to say. Like I said, they very well could try to make a splash in the free agency. If Marner's not available, there's not going to be a lot of players that they're really able to make that splash with. But then there's a 10th overall pick, guys like Gibson that could be moved. I don't think Gibson's going to get him a big return, though, is the problem. And all these young players and draft picks. As much as a lot of these guys are growing and developing, if they see an opportunity to have a better mix of veterans and young guys, maybe they trade a young player in the 10th overall pick, for example, for a really big upgrade. That could always be. They may not all be long-term Ducks. Time will tell. But they will be a very interesting team to watch, and I think they're a team on the rise that could take another step next year, depending on how this summer goes. It's going to be a critical summer to see if they can get into the playoffs, because you're looking at the standings ahead of them. You're like, okay, we can get better, we can make some moves, but who are we going to knock out? That's the big question. And it's going to be tough because there's a lot of really strong powerhouses in the Western Conference ahead of them now. So let me know your thoughts on the Ducks offseason and your expectations in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.